Hello guys, welcome back to another video with ARC Exotics. Now in this video we're going to be talking to you about a little bit of an issue that we have come into with our leopard tortoise. Now the subject of the matter in the video will be pyramiding, and we're basically going to be running you through how we've spotted that our leopard tortoise has started to pyramid and how you can prevent this as well, how you can stop it from occurring. Loads of things like that. We're going to run through all the basics, essentials and things like that when it comes to pyramiding, so you know if it happens to your pet how to counteract this and correct it. Now this is going to be a few things that we're going to mention, and a lot of them are very important, and we have some really good advice from an expert as well, so look forward to that. Let's go. So this is our tortoise setup. Now he is a leopard tortoise for all of you wondering. And this is the little guy here. He's just woken up, so he's still a bit sleepy. And he's looking at me because he can hear me talking. But as you can see, very slightly, his shell has just started to lift a bit more than what it should. Now, as you can see, where the new shell meets different parts, it's slightly lifting. Now this will relate to a video that we've released before about weight and watching the weight. Now this is his setup. He's indoors and he's in a tortoise table. Now the reason that, if it'll focus, there we go. Now there's a few reasons why this can happen. So the first reason being that the tortoise has not got the correct lighting. So when we talk about lighting, we mean the correct bulb. Now this guy has got the Arcadia D3, so he's got his heat and his UVB in one, so that is a tick. But these are all the things that you need to make sure if you are doing it yourself. So make sure that the lighting is correct, the heat is correct as well. Bear in mind that he's only just woken up, so the heat will be a little bit different, but that will rise to about 35, 36, sometimes 37 depending on the temperature of the room. So moving on to the second thing, it could be plants. So this would basically go under diet. Now leopard tortoises, there is so much controversial information on them, but they should have about 20% like weeds and stuff like plantain and wildflowers, so about 20% of that, and 80% should be just grass. So this is literally what we have for him here. This is just turf that we have picked from our garden for him, and obviously it is dusted with the correct supplements. So what you need to make sure is that you're dusting it in the correct calcium and flour that you need for your tortoise. Obviously each are different, every single tortoise can pyramid, but it all depends on what species they are about how you can go to counteract it. So obviously we need to make sure that he's on the correct diet. Now in my opinion he was having slightly too many weeds, so what we have done is we have cut down on the weeds and we have started to give him a lot more grass. Now he's not taken to this very well and he's sulking a little bit, but they do sulk, as you can see there. But when we first got him he was actually fed on vegetables by his owner, which is a big no-no. So we actually converted that to weeds, and after a few days of sulking he actually come round and started eating the weeds and really enjoyed it. So it's going to be the same method, you just got to hold out. Obviously you can still give him little bits of weeds like broken up plantain. You can give him some plants in his tank like the spider plant, a few other things there, more spider plants. So like I say, you need to make sure firstly the lighting, heating and UVB are correct, and then you need to make sure that the feeding is correct on the correct diet. Now when it comes to how much feeding, this little guy likes to be a pig and he eats absolutely loads. So what you've got to do is imagine that his shell was flipped upside down, and if you were to fill his shell up with food, that is how much he should eat. So looking at his shell, that's actually not a lot of food. So I know it's quite hard to sort of picture that, especially if it's your pet, but picture he was not in his shell and it was upside down, and picture it as a scoop. Fill that scoop up with the correct food for your set tortoise, and that is how much that they should be eating. Because in some cases the actual tortoise body can grow quicker than the shell itself, Now that also plays a part in the pyramiding effect. So his little head and legs can grow a lot faster than his shell because his shell is extremely slow growing. So you need to take that into account and feed the correct portion size as well. Now another absolutely huge thing for leopard tortoises especially, now again, don't judge all this information for any tortoise on how to counteract pyramiding. This is specifically for our leopard tortoise, but obviously a lot of these methods like the heating, the lighting, the UVB, the diet, the portion sizes are similar, but certain things aren't. So what we've got in here is a Humid Shed Box. Now I say shed box because that is what they're sort of known as for snakes and stuff, and a lot of people have shed boxes in their vivariums for loads of different reptiles, but this is basically a humid box. Now as you can see on the roof of that is all condensated. That means in there it is nice and misted and humid, as you can see on the side there as well. That is just the same. Now we can do a run through video on how to make one of these if you like. It is just a general storage container from your superstore and a hole cut out the side, just like the Mantis video. That is exactly how I've done it. Filled with moss, and the reason you do it like this is so you can undo the lid and take out the moss, wet it, warm it up, put it back in. Now leopard tortoises especially should not ever have a dry environment. Now when you've got a heat of 34.2 sitting down here, it's going to make it dry. So because that is dry, you want the rest of this to not be. So to not be dry, you need a humid box which he can go in, which helps him with his skin and his scales to make sure they're not drying out under the light, because that can cause a lot of issues like dry skin. And with his substrate, what we use is just standard topsoil, but to keep this nice and wet, as you can see, this is a completely different colour to over here. This is much darker because we keep it nice and moist. Now how you do this is you take out all of the items in the enclosure, so the water bowl, the box, the plants, everything, absolutely everything, so it's just the dirt. And then you will get a jug or a bucket, and that will be lukewarm water. You'll pour it all over the tortoise table. Obviously make sure it is lined with pond liner like ours is here, so you prevent leaks. And then you just churn the soil over and just keep doing that. Now this should be done at a minimum for leopard tortoises, a minimum of 2 times a week. We aim for 3 to 4. Now obviously all of that creates humidity because the heat is underneath it taking it out. So that is another top tip. You need to make sure that the substrate is nice and moist, because again, humidity will play a massive part in the actual pyramiding of the shell itself. Now also you want to look at, like we said in the previous video, about the weight gains. Now obviously our leopard tortoise is called Gus. Now as you can see here, 56 to 70, 75 to 91. So the 75 to 91 is perhaps a bit too big of a jump, which means that his body is growing maybe too much bigger than his shell to keep up with. So that is incorrect portion sizes. So that is something that we're now working on to do the correct portion sizes. But again, if you didn't weigh your reptiles, you wouldn't have known this. So that is why it's another really important tip about weighing your reptiles and why you should do it, because it can prevent things like a health issue, which you later wouldn't see down the line, like pyramiding, until it's too late. So to prevent that, we've given him less portion sizes, and he's not very happy with it because he likes his food, but I mean it's for his own good, so hopefully he'll cheer up. But he's quite a happy little tortoise normally. But yeah, as you can see there, look, the shell is just slightly lifting, but it's nothing to worry about. Obviously over time you see a lot of leopard tortoises with the pointed shells. Now that is inappropriate care. They should be as smooth as possible with very little bumps like this, not huge spikes like a lot of them have. Now when it gets that bad, I'll try and add a photo, it will actually cause internal health issues, which is really bad for your leopard tortoise. So obviously you don't want that, and it can also cause the shell to crack, very much like an African land snail. Not providing it with the correct conditions and calcium will cause the shell to crack. So again, correct portion sizes, which is something that we think has caused this pyramiding. So we are now giving him much less food. This is the morning, so he's only just had this, he's not even touched it yet. Much less food. And another thing we thought we were doing wrong, which we have now corrected, he only had a Humid Shed Box outside, so he couldn't always have access to it, which is our own fault. Now, we always thought that it wasn't that essential, but looking into it from a woman, I'm not going to mention her name, we have her on Facebook, and basically she runs a tortoise protection site. Now, she's helped us with everything to do with this. We basically messaged her saying, this is when we got him ages ago, that there was so much controversial information on sort of the internet for leopard tortoises, and she helped us with the substrate, like the soil, the pond liner, everything, absolutely everything, the diet. So yeah, massive shout out to her. And she said that they would benefit a lot more from a consistent shed box or humid box, whatever you want to call it. So I know a lot of people in America sometimes have the humidity systems. We asked her if we needed this, and she said that we don't. This will do for now. As you can see there, he's just sunbathing, just chilling, pulsing away. So yeah, instead of just having one outside, it is the UK, so it does get cold, especially now this time of year. So we've got one inside now, so you can have access to it all of the time. So with all of these rules implemented into your tortoise's husbandry, then over time the pyramiding should stop. Now, if you were to take your little guy to the vets, firstly, a lot of vets, in my opinion, especially around here, are quite bad, and they wouldn't actually even notice a slight pyramiding. So that is not the best, so you know, keep that in mind as well. They don't always know best, but this is something that to be corrected on. You can't just do it in a day, you can't do it in a week, it's a lifetime. So this is something that you just have to work on consistently to get the shell how it should be. So don't panic, don't stress, it's happened, and now basically what you've got to do is work your best to counteract that, and hopefully you'll see an update video in a few months, potentially a year, who knows, as a nice rounded shell. Now, as you can see, compared to some others, full focus, his shell is actually not too bad at all, but it's very, very slight. So that is something to get on top of straight away. So you keep an eye yourself on your tortoise, and you should be just fine. So basically that is the video in a nutshell, or a tortoise shell. I didn't want to sort of talk about it too much and go into it too much detail. Obviously we can do each subject in more detail, specifically on each video, instead of just an overhaul of a little segment of it. So basically the main things were, make sure you have the correct heat. So like, make sure, you know, whatever heat source you need, whether it's a bulb, a tube, etc., make sure you've got that. Make sure you've got the UVB as well, and like I say, in my opinion, it is always better to get the heat and the UVB together, like the Arcadia bulb, because it's just much more efficient for both you and the tortoise. So heat, humidity, which specifically for leopard tortoises is a massive factor, so that means substrate as well, diet, portion size, so all of that stuff is critical to preventing your tortoise from having a pyramided shell. Now, like I say, you might think, oh, it's fine, it's only very slight, I'll leave it, but once it is pyramided, there's no reversing that. You can only then correct it from there on. So basically, if you don't get on top of it now, it will only get worse. And these tortoises, you know, they don't live for a short period of time like a lot of other things. They'll outlive me for sure if everything is healthy and as should be. So you need to really, you know, look after them. They're basically an investment. So you need to look after him and put in as much care as possible, because 10 years down the line, when he's got a pyramided shell, there's no, oh, we'll just take him to the vets and get it sorted like that, done. It can't be done, it's impossible. So it's down to you as the owner to take full responsibility and put in all the care that you can to make sure that it won't happen. So yeah, if you're doing all of them steps, obviously it varies between tortoise to tortoise, because each species is different, meaning they need different requirements because they're from different places around the world. But the same rule of thumb applies as the husbandry overall. Make sure it is correct. So that basically covers today's video. I hope it has helped you if your tortoise has a pyramidal shell, or even if they don't, keeping an eye out on signs to look out for, and just running through it all, making sure it is all set up how it should be, and triple checking everything. So thank you guys for watching, and I will see you in a couple of days for another video.